rather brilliantly, there are lots of new people here, so thank you so much for coming along. I'm Doug Rintle, and I'm the Artistic Director of the Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch. And this is Outer Limits, and I just want to tell you a little bit about this is my sales pitch. Just a little bit about Outer Limits is that it's our artist development program. We don't have very much money at the Queen's. We're probably the least funded regional theatre in the UK. But where we can, we try and, I really wanted, when I took over just coming up for 5 years ago, I was really keen that to open the doors to local artists. So in Essex and Outer East London, and to really, use our resources in what way we could to support our local artists. For me as a freelancer, I really struggled to get into my home theatre, and I just never really wanted that to be the case for other people, so that conversation could happen. And we can support in lots of ways. We can support in having conversations. We can support in, I can help you write your Arts Council applications or get people to help you write your Arts Council applications. We can give you rehearsal space. We've got a dedicated artist space, which is quite new, which is great. It's an old rehearsal room that we've repurposed just for local artists. And I thought that it would take a while for that to get busy, but it's really, when the theatre is open, it's really full. And so that is there for free. And we have a new space. It's the old foyer stage, which is now called the other stage, which has been revamped and is rather exciting, which is in our foyer. That's a performance space for scratch nights. And also, if you want to try out work in front of an audience, often lots of R&D work is done there, but also complete performances. We very rarely, but we have had the opportunities also to have people can do their show on the main stage. Michelle, who's here, she's had one of her shows on the main stage. So if you've got ideas that we can collaborate on, do come and chat, drop me a line. My address is douglas@queens-theatre.co.uk. Just at the moment, we're doing loads of support on helping people with that awful thing that most of us are terrified of, is Arts Council applications, because obviously they've opened and there's a real focus on giving it to individuals, because obviously of the crisis, and knowing that individual artists are really suffering. So there was a session I did last night. Gularana, who's here, did a brilliant session the week before and is doing another session next week. So this time next week on Arts Council applications, and I'm really simplifying that process. And Gularana's got lots of brilliant insight and experience of writing Arts Council applications. So do come along to that if you can, or if you're interested. Even if you very vaguely thought about applying, do come. Because I know loads of artists go, oh, it's not for me. I can't see myself doing that application form. It really terrifies me, or it's above me. That's nonsense. Come along and just find out a little bit more. I know just one quick thing, just a kind of catch up on the situation. Obviously, there was the government announcement that theatres could open on August the 1st. Thank you so much, because suddenly everybody thinks that every theatre in the country is going to open on August the 1st. And of course, that's not the case, because lots of theatres just can't financially work on a socially distanced audience, and also staff are on furlough and also making work. We are planning to open in October with a new piece. We've commissioned 4 writers, some of them are here, to write some monologues which we're going to perform. It's all going to be rehearsed socially distanced, it's going to be performed socially distanced, and it is will be for a live audience, but also you can watch it online. And so, for example, if you have COVID symptoms on the day of your performance, you can watch it online, or if you're anxious about going out or coming into the auditorium, then you can also watch it online. So we are planning for that. The government bailout for theatre, we're expecting, the Arts Council and the government have been in really deep discussions about how that's going to be, what that's going to look like. slightly worrying that the government are very involved in those discussions. It is coming through the Arts Council, which is good news. But I know that it's been tense, the discussions, that the information will come out, the applications we have a 6-week turnaround, and the money will come, the idea is the money will come on stream in September. And at the moment there is a real sense from the Arts Council, some of the discussions, that there will be a commitment from organisations applying to get money to freelancers, employ freelancers. So that's all I know about that at the moment. We will definitely know more in a few days' time. And if you are here at the next session, then I might take a bit of time to talk about what that is as well. So that's where we are. So we're, keeping on, holding on in there, being really positive and optimistic. There is, the big thing is around Christmas shows. That's the big question, and that's why the government are being really pushed to give the details quite soon. Theatres are going to announce whether they're going to do pantos or Christmas shows in about 2 weeks, and most of the theatres, I think, are moving towards not doing panto or Christmas shows, but are looking at offering something. And the reason why that is because the investment in those shows is so huge. So for us, ours is about £180,000 to make it. And if there was a second spike in Christmas, we would hemorrhage cash, and it probably would bring us down. So there's a lot of risk involved. So that is why there were loads of questions about that. But lots of people are planning to do something. So there is going to be work around Christmas, but just not on the scale that we're used to. Great. Brilliant. That's all of my update. I'm absolutely thrilled that Danielle is here leading the session. And we had a bit of we started this and we did about, I can't remember how many sessions, 8, 9, 10 sessions. Then we had a break, and then we got some funding to hold these sessions again. And I put out on an email, if there's anyone who wants to host, who wants to host a session on a particular skill or a particular discussion. And I think within about 5 minutes of it going out, Danielle came straight back, boom, with this topic. Black Essex, and here is what it became, which obviously is incredibly timely. But I'm going to put myself on mute now. I'm going to hand over to you, Danielle.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First of all, it's so lovely to have this support and have you all here to listen. And at the end, towards about 1:45, we'll see how we get on. We are going to open it up, and it'd be great to hear what you've got from it, or anything you might like to ask from us personally. Yeah, so I thought the best way for us all to start would be to introduce ourselves and what we do, and our Essex journey, basically growing up in Essex and owning up space in Essex, or not owning up space in Essex. So that's where we're going to start. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to try and find a way to get, you have to bear with me, Zoom is not like my forte, but I'm getting it as we go. Yes. Anyway, I don't know what I'm doing, so I'm just going to talk. So I'm from Essex. I was born in Dagenham, made in Dagenham, and then I had a pleasant experience growing up in Essex. I spent a lot of time in Ilford, which we actually discussed, because I discussed that with Charleen, which I found more multicultural. Even though I was from Dagenham, my mum worked in Ilford, so I went to school there, and I had a lot of socialising there. And I went to Kenneth Moore Theatre, I watched stuff a lot there because that was local as well, and Queen's Theatre. So in terms of theatre, that's what I was exposed to from a young age, was Queen's Theatre, Kenneth Moore. And in terms of multiculturalism, yeah, my school was quite diverse, my primary school. Secondary school, not so much so, that was more Upminster. And the start of my performing journey, I went to Theatre Train, Romford, and Barking and Dagenham Theatre Train. So it was all in Essex. And then I went off to Brit School, and from then I started to do shows, and I've been doing bits and bobs. My last show actually was at Queen's Theatre in Hornchurch, the last show before Corona. That was there. So that's amazing to be here with Queen's hosting this, and that's my last creative experience in a space, my gosh. And yeah, I'm going to hand over to Anne next to just, we'll start there. Over to you.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm Anne, and hello to people that I've seen before. My face is everywhere. And right, so I am. So I was born and bred in Essex. I basically born in Rochford. If anyone knows where that is,
Yeah.
You know, it's not a lot there. Never has been. And I then grew up, went to school in the South End area, and then now I live in Leigh-on-Sea. And yeah, basically a lot of my family is still here. A lot of my friends are still here. And yeah, and I'm an actor. I went and did, I basically was a drama teacher, a full-time secondary qualified drama teacher. I did that for about 5.5 years. Then I left to do an MA in acting at Mount View Academy, and then I've been in the industry for 7 years. But my home, if you ask me, home for me is Essex, and always has been. So yeah, so that's kind of my journey and my connection to Essex.
Let's go to Charleen next.
Hey everyone. So you gorgeous faces, look at you. So I'm Charleen Quay, and I grew up in Barking in Essex. My experience. So for me, at the time when I was growing up, Barking was definitely white. I was definitely the only person of colour in Barking. And I'll be honest, Barking wasn't like it is now in many, many ways, which I'm sure we're going to get onto when we get going in the conversation. But yeah, I grew up, it's my home. That's that they taught me, they made me in Barking, and a lot of things have shaped me, and I carry them and I remember them continually throughout my journey. I went to school in Barking. My primary school was in Barking. Then I went to Romford for my secondary school, and then I went to drama school. And it was interesting. My baptism when I went to drama school, I'll never forget it, was my drama teacher saying to me, "You cannot look like that and talk like that." And I said, "What do you mean?" It's like, that's what I mean. So I guess that was my baptism of fire into the industry. And then once I graduated, I kind of moved. I started mostly in musicals, and then I went on to straight acting. And on my journey, I guess, again, we're going to talk about this, I'm sure, much further down the line. My experience was very much of, I'll be honest, frustration. And I got to a point where I was like, I'm just not getting the parts that I can do. And I know I can do this, but I'm just not getting the opportunity. And then being understudied to these wonderful parts, I was just like, but yeah, so I've done my apprenticeship. Give me a chance. Let me do it. And I just felt for myself that they got to a point where I was like, this doesn't feel good for me anymore. I'm starting to hate the very thing that I love. And I just wasn't prepared to have that compromise me as a human being, let alone as an artist. And that's when I started Fourth Monkey with my co-founder, Steve Green. And it was really a bit of it was definitely a revolution for me and for him. And it was definitely a way to go, actually, there's more for you. And there's more for others that look like you, that don't look like you, that don't actually have an opportunity. And you can do this. And it's not dependent on X, Y, and Z number of things that an establishment tell you that it's to do with. You can be a fantastic actor and come from Essex. Now that sounds weird talking to people from Essex, but it's not weird if you're going up for a West End show, or if you're going up for a film, or you're going up those high echelons. You know, we're fantastic people, and I'm super proud to be from Essex. So that was my journey. I still act, and I'm still definitely the co-founder and director of training at Fourth Monkey, of which I'm super proud. Yeah, and that's how I've gotten here.
Thank you, Charleen. I'm going to hand over to Alice/Allison.
Hello, lovely to be here with you, all you legends. I'm Allison. I grew up in Wickford in Essex, which is, I don't know, even most people from Essex haven't heard of Wickford. It's a tiny town wedged between Basildon and Southend, populated mainly by the elderly. And I grew up feeling I really felt angry that I remember getting to my teens and yelling at my mum, like, why did you bring us here? Like, why did we live here? Because I just felt, I mean, light as I am, I was the darkest person in my school, like all the time. And we were the only Black family. I think a West Indian family moved in for a short time and they opened up a Caribbean restaurant for like a few months. Restaurants don't do very well in Wickford, building societies and chip shops do. So I didn't have that kind of kinfolk. And all my family live in Essex, so I'm mixed. So my family's from St. Kitts and East London English on my dad's side. So we had all the family there in Essex. Southend kind of where my white side of the family is, and all the rest of the family like Rainham, Dagenham, Hornchurch area. So I wasn't close. We were in Wickford, so we were kind of close to the family, but not close in the sense all my cousins went to the same school, but we were kind of like there on our own. So we were I just felt very isolated. And then I went to Sylvia Young in my teens, and I really loved it because suddenly I wasn't the only one. I mean, I'm not saying it was the most diverse place on earth, but compared to where I was, like we had teachers of different races. I had Black teachers, gay teachers, everyone was there. I kind of felt like I found my tribe. So mine and my brother's experience was very different. He was kind of like, you left me. And I was like, everyone had an older sibling at school and he was there on his own. So he didn't kind of have that tribe until way, way, way later on in life. I started off dancing in Essex. There was no danger of me ever becoming a dancer. Like I kind of had my start at kind of a little bit of the Queens when I was young, Westcliff in Southend, the Cliffs Pavilion, Towngate in Basildon. But then I kind of just left and, you know, discovered other things, went to Sylvia's, learnt to act and sing. And I was before, at the point of lockdown, in Hamilton, which was wonderful. I've spent probably 80% of my career unemployed. So it was wonderful to be in employment for quite a long time. So I'm just aching for the day when we can go back. So that's kind of a brief me in a nutshell.
Amazing. I kind of want to bounce on from what Allison said in terms of like, we had a discussion prior to this just to see what we wanted to talk about. And I said, my experience growing up in Essex, being Black, wasn't emotionally challenging for me personally, which was interesting because that's not always the case for everyone. And I don't know exactly why that was. Like I said, I don't know if it's because I went to school in Ilford where it was a bit more multicultural and I wasn't the only one. It was only as years went on and I moved around Essex, I realised, oh, that is a thing when you get further out or away from London. But otherwise, I didn't have that journey. And I think that's something we should share with the group about feeling like you're in this place where you grew up that we call home, but then in some areas of Essex, you feel like it's not, or you're made to feel like it shouldn't be. You know, so I'm going to open up to the ladies, whoever wants to jump in with that discussion.
I think I'll jump in. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was really lovely about our conversation yesterday was about the diversity within diversity. And so it's not just, Black people, and therefore they all have the same experience. I think what we discovered yesterday was our engagement in our environments was so different. And it was so beautiful to hear each other's stories from that perspective. And I think, now I forgot to say this, and this is very important, I should have remembered to say this. I grew up like at Barking Broadway Theatre, and I was a very good villager at Panto Theatre, just saying, just put it out there. Then I progressed. Don't laugh, this is very serious. And then I progressed to Hornchurch, absolutely, Queen's Theatre, and I was the best villager number 4 they had ever seen. So what was lovely for me was to be able to get a little touch of that, but then I still had to figure out the world that I lived in. And that was confusing because at times I was fine being the only Black villager or whatever it was, and it didn't bother me, I didn't feel any way. But it's really interesting how intersecting with the arts at different places, it wasn't a problem until it's kind of brought to you as a problem. And I think that's where it was just, that to me was the interesting part of my journey, shall we say.
Mm.
But it was so interesting to hear how our different influences yesterday, and obviously what we're going to bring to the floor now, was just so rich, but so diverse. Even though we are 4 Black women from Essex, and I mean, Danielle and I were literally neighbours. We worked out that we grew up just around the corner from each other randomly, but they were such different experiences.
Mm. Anyone else want to jump in from that?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess that's what Charleen's saying, you know, this, I guess, you know, we're talking theatre related kind of while we're here, you know, this idea of Black theatre, of Black plays, and kind of the the surrealness, the absurdity in a way of saying Black plays for Black people. You're like, oh, like, what are you talking about? With it, Black is so many cultures. Black is so many generations. Black means different things regionally, you know, experiences. Within that, you have class. Within that, there's economics. So in a way, you know, when people, this kind of idea of Black, you know, yeah, this idea of Blackness, I think one of the things we need to get across to people is actually it's huge. And of course, if we don't kind of comment on this idea that there are different identities within Blackness, of course, there's this pressure, you know, you feel this like pressure as a Black person to be like, God, I need to be Black, you know, how Black am I, right? It's like, and you, yeah, I can't describe it, but do you know what I mean? There is like this pressure.
Yeah.
And so for example, so I'm mixed race is what I should say. And also, so my dad's Ugandan, my mum is, my dad's Ugandan, came over at the time of Idi Amin. My mum is white, blonde hair, blue eyes. And my dad, in terms of culture, you know, we're encouraged as a family. You don't ask my dad about what happened to him in the past. You don't talk about it. He won't talk about it. So, and he and my grandma, who's in Uganda, who I've never met, we have nothing to do with Uganda. So my roots are my mum's roots. Like in terms of my culture, is Essex. So now you have this conflicting idea. So now for me as an individual, it's like, right, you know, fuck, I need to, sometimes there's this pressure on me to be Black, whatever that is. And also I need to be Essex. And you're like, Christ, I need to be the Essex girl as well. What is that? Well, I couldn't be further from that either. So now you have this question of identity and me just going, hang the fuck on. Aren't I just Anne? Like, aren't I just me at the end of the day? And I guess kind of theatre, I mean, being an actor, of course, you're judged on, to a certain degree, of course, casting wise, what you look like, who you can play, what you can play. And Lord knows we'll talk about that at some point, I'm sure. But the fact is like that, this question of, you know, you grow up, when you're younger, you don't see colour. You're just a kid. Do you know what I mean? You just, until someone teaches you there's a difference, then you start to see it. And then, you know, you go, oh, right, okay, I'm Black, okay, I'm mixed race. But then you then start to, and I'll say it is culture. I mean, it comes from Black culture in terms of this identity thing and what you should be and who you should. It comes from white culture, it comes from media. So there's a lot of kind of directions and pressures as to what you should be and who you should be. But it's, so yeah, I just kind of, I suppose I'm waffling, but I'm essentially just highlighting that. I guess I'm just highlighting it really.
Yeah. Yeah. Allyson, anything of that?
I just think, yeah, just jumping on the back of what you said, Anne, about like identity is it's such a huge thing. And I mean, I've got to resign myself to the fact that, I mean, I'm approaching 40 and identity has changed so much in my time on the earth. I kind of think when I was a child, the term that you would call mixed race, it was half caste. That was the accepted term that everyone used. And I remember my dad's white and my mum's Black. And I remember my dad really hating it. He was like, I don't like the notion that you are half of anything. You have two, so you have both. So you're not less than, you have the addition of. So it's just like, I just hate the kind of negative connotation that a half is like a subtraction and you haven't, nothing's been subtracted from you. And I quite like that, I quite like that. And I realized that I was quite lucky to have that. I had my white side of the family fighting for me and kind of teaching me what allyship was from a young age, but also then that changed. Then kind of, and Akala talks about this as well, that kind of growing up in the kind of late 80s, 90s, there almost was no separation. It was just like you were white or you were black. You were either targeted by the National Front or you weren't. So it's kind of like you kind of were all part of the same pot. And now that's kind of gone through another wave where that's changed again. So you kind of have to be clearer about your identity to make sure that you're not taking away from someone else, so that you're differentiating that my experience is different from yours and I see your experience, but I'm not trying to speak on your experience. So it's been, identity changes so much as well. And I think that can be a massive challenge for us when we already identify so differently. Like, look, there's 4 of us on this chat. We represent 4 different cultures within the Black greater culture. So it's just such a huge kind of never-ending topic that kind of you can only really ever start the discussion and carry on. You can't really reach the end because we're talking about something that's so much wider.
Yeah, I'm gonna bounce off the back of that and be like, did you ever feel like, or do you feel like you fit in Essex?
I never felt like I fit in Essex growing up. I feel like I'm very introverted by nature. I do wonder if that is why, because kind of you spend so much of your formative years at your kind of given home. And I didn't fit in, which was kind of brings me back to my screaming at my mum as a teenager saying, why did you bring me here? Like, all my friends lived close to their friends and they found kind of, they were surrounded by people who got them. And I just seemed to be surrounded by people who didn't get me. So I was kind of having to give account of myself and to answer for justifying my presence every day, really. As a very young, I don't remember a time where I wasn't racially aware. Even kind of when I think back to when I was like 3 years old, I just thought, I just remember being very aware of, how do other people see me? What do they see when they look at me? Do they see that I'm different from my mum? Why do they ask questions when my dad comes to collect me? Why are they confused by that? And I just remember being very aware of it the whole time. And then just in certain circles, not feel like when we did, this is going to sound massively stereotypical, but the district sports, I was quite athletic when I was young. And at the district sports, I would meet other Black kids from local schools. There were no other Black kids at my school. And we just immediately have this, oh my God, what products do you use in your hair? Where's your mum from? Oh, that's close to my mum's island. And there was just this, suddenly we had so much to talk about. And there was an understanding that wasn't there with people that I'd been at school with for kind of 10 or 10 plus years. So I felt massively kind of on my own as a child. Yeah, definitely, like so isolated.
What about you, Charleen? Do you feel like, do you fit in, or do you feel like you did fit in Essex?
I feel like that's such a fluid question for me. I always feel that Barking is my home. And silly things, when you're touring, if you go past Barking or you're ever on the way to somewhere else, I'm like, oh, I love you, Barking, I love you, that's my home. But then I think there are moments where I think you don't. I remember when I was working and I was working on a job and somebody was talking about Barking, and the BNP had just been voted some seats in Barking. And I remember feeling shame. I'll be honest, I remember feeling shame. And then I remember thinking, well, where does that leave me? I only know Barking as my home. I know Essex as my home. And I get this, and I would come back and there was a definite shift in energy. But that was weird to me, because I'm like, but I see myself as, I'm one of you. The colour of my skin is not the sum and total of who I am as a person. And that hurts. similar things happening with UKIP. And when it, well, maybe not now, but you know what I mean? It happened again. So you get these jolts of reality that kind of like toss you about a little bit.
Do you think that's just an Essex thing though, or is that?
I was going to say, I think it actually is the identity question that Anne just brought up. And I also think, well, what is blackness? What is that? But then I think to myself, well, if I try to understand my identity but I have to break it down. What is that? It's my name. It's my culture. And I'm talking about the complexities of all of these things as well. So culture is just not one culture. Yes, I am black, but I am half Jamaican and I'm half Ghanaian. You can't just go, somebody is black, and you can't just say a black play, because you don't say a white play. Do you know what I mean? It's a play that tells the stories of human beings, and they should be rich, because human beings are rich and we are all diverse. And that's not just down to bulking people in the color of their skin or gender or age or sexuality, or do you know what I mean? All of these things. So I think fitting in has always been a weird thing for me. And even to like the stereotype, having to play to a stereotype, is even more confusing. So people think because you're black, all you can do is kidulthood. And I'm like, no, what? Do you know what I mean? And then you go into an audition and you don't speak like that. So immediately there's a judgment, and it's like, well, I'm not black enough for you. What is black? What am I trying, what target am I trying to hit? Because it's such a narrow view. I'm not answering your question. I'm definitely going to try.
You are. You're kind of making it a different way, which is good. Because I think I'm going to go over to Anne with that, in terms of like, you know, where we fit in as Black Essex people in this industry as well. That's a very broad question, but in terms of what Charleen said, like I've had that before, like, oh, you talk like that? Because, you know, expect us to talk a certain way, like Not Good or Top Boy, which are great, they're their own thing. But yeah, over to you, Anne.
No, absolutely. I'm sorry, I'm laughing because it's just ridiculous. It's the ridiculous nature of it, isn't it? But yeah, absolutely. I have that as well. When I go in and I literally go in and I sit down for an audition of people I've never met before, and as soon as I open my mouth, you see this. Like it's fear. It's like it's this, basically it's this. What the fuck do we do with this? What on earth do we? What is this? What is this casting? So I have comments like, well, you're exciting, aren't you? And I'm like, oh, I know why you're saying this. It's cool. You know, I feel like I get this shit all the time, or I see it in people's eyes all the time. Don't worry about it. But it's just amazing. But it's because, particularly in this industry, there is this thing of you're going in, we just, if you're going with casting directors or whatever, or directors that aren't open-minded, but essentially that are just wanting you to play black. And I was about to swear then, I refuse. I won't do it anymore, right? I won't. If that is what you want, then don't hire me. Like that's it. Because I kind of feel like there has to be, like, there's got to be a point where it stops. And clearly, like, you know, to them, I'm like, you ain't intended on stopping anytime soon. So I'm going to have to be the full stop in this conversation. So thank you very much for your time. Bye-bye. So, but it's true. And I was with an agent previous to the one that I'm with now. Love the one I'm with now, but the one before would only put me up for maids, slaves and prostitutes, right? Could be in any format, Shakespeare, musical, whatever, panto, couldn't care less. But not panto. But the fact is, like, only putting me up because that is how they saw me. That is, they saw my colour and not my ability, right? And that for me is like, okay, well, in that case then, you're like, you know, you mentioned earlier, Charleen, about the fact that, you know, stories are human stories. Like, we all go through it in terms of like emotion. Love is love. It don't matter what freaking colour you are. We don't need a black play to explain love. You're like, we all know what love is. So it clearly winds me up. So it is just this thing where you kind of, you know, thank God for the people that, inverted commas, take risks. because you're like, why are you taking a risk on black? What on earth? Like, why are we saying that? But unfortunately, that is the language that kind of, I suppose, you have to use to a certain degree, because, you know, in some producers' eyes, it's a financial risk, because it's one that they haven't taken before. What are audiences going to think of it? Are audiences going to come? The audiences that we normally have, is it going to put them off seeing a black face on a poster? You know what I mean? So, but like, the thing is you know, and again, we'll probably say later, but I'm like, if you don't give audiences choice, then of course they're not going to know that they are missing out.
Yeah.
That's it. End of. If you don't give them like, if you don't give them Essex plays, they're not going to see themselves. Do you know what I mean? So there's no connection there. So why would the audience come?
Yeah.
So I guess it's kind of twofold, but anyway, that's me.
No, brilliant. I want to hit over to Allyson after that point, actually, about Essex and the theatre, because Allison's experience with, you went to the theatre a lot as a child. I would be good to share that with everyone, but also bouncing off of what Anne said, is Essex ready for the risk, so to speak, in terms of having more? I don't know what I'm saying, but I feel like I know what I'm saying. Are they ready?
I think yes, because I don't think there is any risk. I don't think that I went to the UK Theatre Awards a couple of years ago, and I was astounded by how I was like, okay, I get it now. I get these conversations that I've been having with my agent and stuff, all these things that you're up against. This is what we're up against. I had no idea. I think if your own life is already very diverse, which for most of us that is the case, it's a surprise when you're faced with a sudden lack of diversity. And I mean, I was the youngest and, you know, one of the blackest people in the room. I mean, it was just, I was like, this is what regional theatre looks like. We are in a London bubble. And it came just after Brexit. So it was kind of even more of a, oh, okay, I really have been living in a London bubble here. And I don't think I feel like television is better in that sense, that you do kind of see something that is a little bit closer to what you see when you're walking down the street. So in light of that, I don't think that it's a risk, because people are already seeing diversity when they leave their houses, unless they live in a certain place. But if they have the choice, and if they are a regular patron of the theatre anyway, I think unless there's a super, super issue, they're not going to go, oh, well, I'm not going to see that. If they go and see every play at the theatre, then they'll go and see this new play, and they'll see that, and they might bat an eyelid, they might not. But I don't feel like there's any risk. I just feel like, you know, people just need to do it, because people will see it.
So
Black Panther showed that.
Yeah, Black Panther did show that, definitely. But why do you think? Because my experience of seeing myself is my experience of showing myself on stage was showing myself.
Excuse me, so somebody's making a noise. Can you go on mute, please? Everyone go on mute.
Okay. Thank you. My experience of seeing myself on stage was, I did see a few things locally, but was never local. My first experience of seeing myself on stage was when we went to London or Stratford East or Hackney Empire. It was never round the corner. I lived round the corner from Queens for years.
Yeah, no, there was no diversity on anything that I went to see on stage. That I don't think I saw any diversity on stage until when I was in the latter stage of secondary school. Nicola Hughes suddenly took over as the lead in Chicago, and you saw her gorgeous, muscular body, like just looking fabulous on the posters. And I was just like, who is that? I need to know who this chick is. You know, and she's an icon, you know, in theatre in general. But I think that was the first diversity in theatre that I was aware of, apart from when they used to show live from the Empire. They do the kind of Sunday nights at Hackney Empire on Channel 4. And that was kind of it. As a family, we tune into everything like that. But as far as theatre went, I was unaware of everything. And if I was in anything, I was the only one, or one of the only ones.
Yeah. And that kind of hasn't changed massively I think it's changing, but there are still times I think we have felt like the only one. And like when you said you're growing up in Essex and you look around and you're the only one, and then you go to your job and you're the only one. It's just a constant layer of feeling outside, but you're not. So yeah, I'm going to hand over to Charleen as well. So about similar to what I just said about Essex feels like, you know, it likes things the way it is in some ways. You know, there's a routine in Essex, and I think you said this yesterday as well, Anne. You know, we love a routine here, and that's why I asked: is it a place where we can take those risks, or is it the fact that we're not in those spaces to tell or encourage people? Yeah, put that on, but you know. But I mean, I'm not saying night. I mean, that might be a little bit too far, but you know, do you know what I mean? Charlie, I don't know if you've got anything to hit up on what I just said.
I think I'll hand over to Anne to say the bit that we spoke about sort of yesterday. Yeah. I just feel like I have a huge problem with seeing me and the colour of my skin as a risk. How is that okay? That you know, and there is real education to be added into the conversation, because Black Panther, was that a flop? You put it on now, it would still be maybe not now with COVID, but it would still be inundated. But there's a real psychology attached to the way that you use words. Even the word black is so reductive. And if you put in people's mind, perpetuate in people's minds, whether you are the theatre, whether you are the artist, I'm a risk, or I'm taking a risk in employing people of colour, or a show of colour. And that's really quite disturbing to me, I guess.
Yeah.
And likewise, yeah, cool. But what's the Essex equivalent of Nine Night? Because that was a hit. That transferred.
Yeah.
So young Black female writers, Black male writers from Essex, Black non-binary writers from Essex, because we are here.
Yeah.
And so that to me is like, if we're talking about progress and we're talking about moving things forward, that's where we need to go. And I think we also need to go forward, but we need to look back, because I think, I mean, you told me that Windrush docked in Tilbury, Essex. Well, that's like the road. Why don't I know that? Why isn't that taught to me at school? Why don't I have the ability to puff my chest out because I know where I came from? And that is a huge, I mean, we talked yesterday about feeling lost, but how can we not when we don't know the things that our ancestors achieved? We don't know the culture that they lived in. We don't know what they created. We don't know the language, or we don't have that. And it's complex and it's massive. And I was thinking the other day about, you know, ancestry.com. Well, good luck, Charleen. I couldn't do that. I'll never know what my grandmother did, or her great grandmother did. So you do feel lost. So you try to cling on and you try to hold on to things, but it's like everything falls through your hands.
Yeah.
And so it's a stepping forward, but it's also a stepping back and trying to reclaim some of the history that we don't know. And I say not just me as a Black female, but white people in Essex, because we landed here first. You know what I mean? Like I say, why don't we know that Tilbury was where the Windrush docked? Do you know what I mean? Why don't we know that the first soil they stepped on was Essex soil? Yes, I'm proud of that. Why did I only find that out a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And how many people have found this out for the first time watching this now? Well, that was from you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. But do you know what I mean? And there's a play in that. There's these things, and it would be a lovely way to unite the difference that we have in Essex, which is so rich, and the Essex spirit, which is killer. And I'm telling you, I don't care where you're from, the Essex spirit is the Essex spirit, and it is special.
Yeah.
Why aren't we celebrating that? And it's not to do with anyone's colour of the skin.
Yeah, it's celebrating all of it, all of what is Essex.
Richness. And the Asian stories as well. I mean, and obviously, do you know what I mean?
No, but it's true. It's true.
It's present. We weren't not here. We were here.
Yeah.
And that enriches the whole community, not just one sector of a community, because we're all learning our history. And I think that's powerful. So when we're saying, are we ready for change? Yeah, I think we are ready for change. But it's not just a one it's not going to be one solution that solves everything. Everybody has to play their part, and everybody just has to come together and be greedy. History is so rich, and the future is so exciting.
Definitely.
If I can just...
I cannot through it. Sorry, Anne.
No, it's great. Jump in, Anne. Go.
And sorry, but yes, going back to this idea of Essex and change, and is Essex ready for change? I mean, Essex is due change. Is one way I would phrase that.
Okay.
Is Essex ready for change? Well, I don't necessarily believe, in brackets, Tory government that is voted a lot in this county, that Essex wants change. Essex doesn't like change, right? Because you don't know if the grass is greener on the other side. And I was saying the other day, I was like, you know, Jeremy Corbyn promised a load of lovely things. Essex didn't want them. Didn't want them. Stuff it. Keep your lovely things, Jeremy. Whether Jeremy would have made a great PM is another story. But the fact is doesn't want it. Essex doesn't like it, right? Even if we're talking working class, absolutely not. Tory, right? Or we mentioned UKIP, right? Because there's this fear. There is this underlying fear in Essex of change, and it kind of sits there. You know what I'm saying? I feel like as a county, it sits there quietly rumbling, and whether you feel it, you know, on a day-to-day basis is another thing. But I feel personally it is there, and I guess sometimes life is like medicine. Essex doesn't know what is good for it unless you give it a choice. So in offering in things like the arts, it can only watch, people of Essex can only watch what is on TV by the people that put on it. Do you know what I mean? Theatre-wise, they can only watch what we put on. So once they get used to it, once they trust the theatre, Doug, the Queens, once they trust the theatre, once they trust what they're watching, they will come. You know what I mean? Black audiences, Asian audiences, ethnic minority audiences will come, right? But it's that thing of they have to, you know, they've got to feel invited. They've got to feel a part of the party. No one wants to be on the outside, you know? But if you're constantly doing, I mean, my local theatre is the Cliss Pavilion in the Palace. If you're constantly regurgitating the same stuff in a different format, so we mentioned murder mysteries the other day, which made me die, Alan. Agatha Christie, right? If you only do that, of course you're only going to have the same people, right? But of course they don't know any better because there's no choice. So of course they won't progress. We'll be having the same conversation in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, right? But it's like I'm saying, Essex might not feel ready, but it is due change.
Yeah, and in the climate we are in now, in terms of what has happened during this time, because I have to admit, if there wasn't this sudden urgency for us to be able to say our narratives and say how we've felt all this time, because there's many spaces as Black people you haven't been able to speak up and say what's happened. If it wasn't for this climate, I'm not sure if I would have felt comfortable being like, hey Doug, not because of that, just because I've never been like, can we have this chat? And part of that change that is happening will create those sort of things, like you said, Anne, to be like, if we give them this, then they have a choice, you know? It's like, if we don't give it to people, then we don't know that, if we don't give it to them, they're not going to come, basically. It's like you said, Allison, seeing Nicola Hughes on a poster, it's like, that makes you want to go to the theatre. So it's just given Essex the option for that, I think.
And inspiring, you know, inspiring younger generations. It will, because of course, if we don't inspire, again, there will only ever be art for the rich, for people that can afford it. Do you know what I mean? Like that's just it, basically. So we have to inspire. We have to have that drive. It comes from younger generations. But we have to offer it to them in order for them to see what they can be, what theatre, what arts, what they can be.
Because what we said yesterday was, go on, no, Allyson.
No, just to piggyback off the back of that as well, also honouring older generations, because as we've ascertained today, the Black Essex kind of presence has always been loud and strong, and having the chance to honour the people who went before us with our work, and with kind of showing them that we're accountable to them, and we see you, and we want to honor you with kind of work that is worthy of you coming to watch. Because when you have that, they're the most loyal audience. Like my aunties they go and see, they look for leaflets, like when they're at their local like hairdressers or whatever, because Black businesses support Black artists, and they look for things, and then they'll go and watch things that they would never go and see, just because they're like, oh, this girl is in it and I don't know who she is and I just want to support her. Like no one spends the coins like the Black community when they want to support their artists and the work, and just there's real something kind of not ignoring the people who have gone before us. How do we treat them with our art? Also, I'm really heartened by all the comments that I'm seeing, by the way. It's just lovely to see all that.
On that note, I mean, I know we could talk for, this is so true, we could talk for hours, but I'm very aware that, because obviously the chat is going and we do want to open it. If anyone wants to put anything forward, it'd be great. And if you don't, obviously, of course, that is fine as well. I don't know if Doug wants to jump in and say anything about jumping in and asking questions.
Yeah, too. I mean, it is it's a safe space. I just want to say I am recording this because there was a big request. Lots of people couldn't turn up. But also, if you feel free to say whatever you want, and if there is time, and this is for the speakers as well, is that if you want me to edit anything out, then I can do. It won't go out until tomorrow. So it's a safe space. I found it personally, incredibly inspiring. So thank you very much. I'm speaking so frankly because it's really important, and for me to hear. I mean, my takeaway at the moment is the Essex, which is so beautiful, and because it's going back to that thing, is that we are all human. Is Essex spirit is special, and it doesn't matter what your colour is. Yeah. And that connectivity between us, when there is so much that separates us, that incredible statement brings us together, and that feels like a really, really, really powerful tool. If you want to, how do we want to do this? There's lots of, if you want to speak, just chip in, because I can't, you're over a couple of screens, and I don't think Daniel will be able to see everyone, but do.
Or if you pop in the chat, I don't know if that's useful.
Pop in the chat, yeah.
Check out the chat.
Sorry, I was just going to ask, I'm from Hackney. So when I just feel, grew up, born and bred. So it just feels like sometimes that from me, coming into Essex and living here now, I've never heard this story, and I've always wondered, where are the people? Like, where are my people in Essex? Like, where are they? And when are they going to speak? Because it's so wonderful. And I have friends from Dagenham, etc., blah blah. And I'm just like, you guys, like, you have a history, you have a voice. Why are we always rushing to London? And why don't we use the space that we have right here to tell our stories and through our experience? So it's so good that, I'm so happy that you guys are on board, and, we're having this conversation now, because I think it's just amazing as well. So thank you. Honestly, really thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm hoping that it just doesn't stay here, that we actually do something, that we want to see you guys and say, do you want to see you have those experiences as well? So, and it's inspiring, because I do have aunties, uncles in Hornchurch dying to come to the theatre, but they just feel that they can't come because they don't feel like, they don't feel it's a safe space and stuff like that. So there is money to be made. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Bargain for there.
I know.
Nice. This is what it's all about.
Anybody else? Like, obviously, there's no pressure to. We can just wrap it up in a. Oh, there's a something that's popped in.
Comment.
Oh.
Someone talking. Oh, I don't want to. Okay. Hi, my name is Quay. Sorry, I'm not going to show my face. I've just finished exercising. But yeah, this has been incredible for me. In fact, someone I work with actually told me about this meeting, and we've been doing having conversations at work that I never thought would happen. And the fact that this is happening, I just feel, I feel really empowered, because as the previous person said, although they lived in Hackney, I've lived in Brentwood for most of my life, and I it was not diverse. And my experience, yeah, I could go on about it forever. But I've always wondered, you know, where are the other Black people in Essex that have had the same experiences as me? It's always been sort of people, the Black experiences I've met were in university, where I feel like a lot of Londoners, sorry if there's any Londoners here, but I feel like that's when they start facing the microaggressions, everything else. Whereas I grew up with it. I grew up with having to, you know, return to smile, be uncomfortable with the people that I even like, and things like that. So it's always been quite a really difficult experience to be able to share with other people. But yeah, this has really been great. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. And I'm going to jump in the chat. Is it Zenith? Sorry if I've said your name wrong. Zenith, I'm going to go with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, has asked us, I live in London but work in Essex. We've recently been challenged on the lack of diversity on a project. Where are the creative and cultural networks I can connect with? I'm not sure. Charleen, is that something you would, I don't know.
I think it's a super question. And I think it is,
I don't know.
there's a really curious thing that there is stuff to be learnt from everywhere. That's how I feel anyway. And we see people organising themselves who maybe don't have, whose views are different to our views. Let's just say that, right? But they do it in a really, really good way. So maybe we need to build a similar community, speaking positive, inclusive, diverse, rich, informative, factually correct, informative networks. And I feel that the organisation of those communities has to happen somewhere, but it has to happen across the board. Yeah. Because by default, because we have spoken about feeling lost, maybe feeling isolated, what does that mean? It means you have no network. It means you have no support system. It means you have no community. So maybe this, I mean, I think I said in the chat a bit earlier today, actually, I was like, can we please keep in contact? You're like the first 46 people that I've met. Please, in the same industry as me, can we please keep in contact? It's silly things like that, but I think you're absolutely right. And it's almost like this opportunity of where we are in the political, social landscape has given the opportunity for people to speak out. And now people are speaking out. We have to hold on to each other. We have to continue to keep speaking. We have to organise, and then we have to revolutionise. We have to innovate. We have to open doors. And that has got nothing to do with anybody's colour of the skin, but everything to do with speaking the same language. I get what you're saying, Anne, and I guess I'm just... You're right. When you say about there is this kind of tipping point of where the people don't want to change, but there are people that don't want to change, and they will always be there, unfortunately. And there are people that do want to change. And at some point, it's got to go. I hope it goes the right way, but at some point, it's got to go. But sometimes you have to cajole it to go. And I say that's the community networks. I say that's things like this, and thank you, Doug, again. Things like this that make this happen. Ideas start to spout. We get involved. Like, I would love for us to come and get involved to do something more, whatever that is, because we're all creatives, we're all one community. We've got a community here with 36 participants. Well, I'm very proud of that. Do you know what I mean? And maybe it's a humble start, but guess what? Everything starts humble. Everything that you see starts humble. So we might as well just start now. The conversation's being had. But you're right, where are they? And there are people already doing that, but we just have to keep spreading those words and keep looking and keep sharing and keep inspiring and keep encouraging, actually.
Yeah.
It is hard.
Yeah.
It's up to you.
But this has been clearly something that I didn't know I needed in terms of, because like we said, we've all grown up here, it's been home, but I never knew I needed to talk about actually what was it to be Black and from Essex. And like the question about where are these places that have these networks, I genuinely don't know. And I've grown up in Essex all my life. So that, like you said, it's about maybe us creating, or maybe they are there And just if you are there and you're in this Zoom, like, yeah, let us know. Like, I would have loved to have known more about that when I was growing up in Essex. But yeah, go on, Doug.
I think Dilek from the Mercury Theatre is here, which is really, really brilliant. Thank you so much for coming. I think you want to.
I just wanted to. Hello, I'm Dilek. Oh yeah, that's my name. I just wanted to say a huge thank you to you guys, because that was awesome. I'll give you a quick 30 seconds. I'm from Southeast London originally. Well, Sidcup, so that's a bit of a cheat. And I moved to Colchester to do a producer placement at the Mercury as part of Tamasha. And your story is exactly like when I moved to Colchester, going, where is everyone? I was like going, oh, okay. But what I also found really interesting is, not going to hijack the convo, is the creative industry. I came from law and jumped into the creative industry, went to drama school, became a producer. And then suddenly the word that I'd never heard in my whole life, the BAME, oh, you're Turkish, you're ethnic. Oh. And I was like, but I was born in Lewisham. Like, I don't understand. But it is the first time and the first industry that I've really heard this huge, oh, it's like a magic word. And do you guys find that? Have you found that? And is that a bit weird? Because I found it a bit weird. Do you know what I mean? And it's so lovely to speak to, artists of colour, underrepresented voices, diverse voices, to go, isn't this a bit weird for such a creative liberal industry? We've got these boxes and such a they love it. I don't even want to say they, but they're just like, Turkish, oh, we can put you in the ME bit.
Sorry. I honest to God, I could have a Zoom session by myself on BAME, and honestly, and we could talk all day. What a dreadful term. What a lazy, dreadful term. Like, it is lazy. Grouping everyone together, like, it's literally, it's white and everyone else. Yeah. It's like you, what, and I'm not being funny, the people that you're saying you're BAME, the people that are BAME don't even use it. So what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And half the time you spend trying to explain what BAME stands for. So, I mean, it's bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. Like, that's a goner. I could spend days on that topic. Everyone needs to stop using it. Like, because, and also, Black, Asian, minority, ethnic. That means that's even worse. That means everybody else that isn't, two bigger ones, you can go together. And this is the thing, right? Language is so important. Language is so important. What are we doing telling younger people that you are BAME? BAME sounds like lame, right? Shakespeare was all about words and sounds. BAME is the same sound as lame. It's rubbish. So absolutely, like, what? Say your colour. Be proud of it. That's me. I'm going to go have a glass of wine in a minute.
Lazy. It's lazy. The colour came up with BAME. No person of colour, no person that isn't white. Sorry, but no one came up with that, because that is offensive. Because it tells you again, all the others. Don't even be bothered to think about diversity within. So you're told you're a risk. You don't even have a label. Not that anyone wants a label, but you're just an other. And you're supposed to be, then people will sit and pat themselves on the back. We've got that covered. We've got diversity covered, because we're just sticking BAME on it and we're good to go. That's not good to go. That's terrible.
It's
a friend of mine is. Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I have to leave. I hate the term BAME. Bun BAME, like bun all mother flipping idiots who tries to call me BAME. Like, it's just there's nothing worse. There's never been a term that kind of reinforces other more. It's lazier than what came before. I don't know why people seem more comfortable saying BAME than they do Black, Asian, Turkish, disabled. I mean, it is just the worst when globally we're not the minority. So I take massive umbrage to that. I'm not, it reinforces an abnormality. I might not be white, but I am normal. I am not other. I am not the minority. I am front and center of my own narrative, and that deserves to be represented. So I say bun BAME, it has no place. The term global majority has been offered around, which I prefer, but also call people what they are. I mean, I don't see why that's so hard. I mean, call people what they are.
People are not making an effort. And that's the change that's got to happen. You have to make an effort.
Yeah.
Because it's just too easy to put people in boxes and put labels on people. You have to learn. And we have to educate ourselves to ask those questions, because they are important questions.
I think therein lies a lot of thing in the creative industry, is people are afraid to ask questions. Therefore, you blink and you've got 2 or 3 years have gone past, and there is no Black narrative, there's no Asian narrative, there's no Turkish or whatever, not underscoring whatever, but because people are simply too scared to say, okay, I'll put your story on, but it's and that's where it's the bit and the hesitance, and you're like, well, speak and say, what is it?
And that's where it's got to change from the top.
Yeah,
somebody that understands that narrative is making the decisions. Watch and see how the erring, the stuttering will stop. Watch and see how all those plays will be told with integrity, because those voices are included in making the decisions, and they'll do so with integrity because it's who they are.
Yeah.
There's no one that's going to represent themselves in a stereotypical way, because they understand nuance, and they understand what it is, that there's more than the top layer that you see, or a label that's attached that defines who they are as an individual. You change the makeup of that and you change the people having those conversations, then you get understanding, because people talk. Yeah, they might be awkward because everyone has a blind spot. We're talking about color here, we're talking about race, we're talking about culture here, but we've mentioned ability. I hate disability, but we mentioned ability, differing abilities, we've mentioned age, all of those things. If those people are around the table, like genuinely being heard, that's when bridges form what is missing in diversity and inclusion, because I hate that name too, because those terms too, because it now means nothing. It's just another way to lump in people together that are other.
Yeah.
Just all these ways of skirting around dealing with the problem.
And I think you've hit the nail on the head, Charleen, with what you said. It's being heard, and that is part of the conversation. It's that we have loads of conversations all the time, but the wrong people aren't actually listening.
Or even at the table.
Yeah.
You've got to be at the table. And that maybe is scary for some, but it shouldn't be. It's empowering for everyone. No one loses out. Everything just gets richer, gets bolder, gets more inspiring, gets more dangerous in a creative sense.
Yeah. Someone in the chat actually jumped in and wanted to, I think I saw, I don't know, I can't see it now.
That was me, sorry.
Yeah, jump in. It was about BAME.
Yeah, so basically I wanted to ask, obviously in light of the term BAME being like just inappropriate and othering, what sort of useful commitments to diversity do you think that theatre companies, arts organisations, creatives, etc. could be making, instead of like, you know, a blanket statement about a certain percentage of BAME or whatever? What useful commitments could those organisations be making to make sure that we do have those people at the table or involved in the creative process? Sorry, that might be an impossible question.
I'm going to go in again. Sorry, I'm going to put myself on mute after this one. I promise, right? I'm going to put myself on mute. I swear to you. It's education. It's education and conversation. We have to look at casting differently. Unless it says black, you know, we've just discussed this, but you know what I mean. Unless it says there is a certain need, why is that automatically established as white? What, we have blended families everywhere. Why is it all of a sudden everyone's white? It's not real. So it can't be to do with quotas. It's got to be with truth, honesty, genuine conversation, and education. Because we're so trained to go, this is this, and we don't even think about it. We don't give it a second thought. That has to be interrogated, and that has to be shaken. So when you're saying about a commitment to learn, a commitment to educate yourself, a commitment to have awkward conversations, a commitment to talk to people that don't look like you, and listen and hear what they're saying. Yeah. Otherwise, no one learns, no one grows, nothing changes, nothing happens.
Yeah,
that's what I would say. And I'm putting myself on mute.
No. I would say I don't have the answers, but I will advise on what it isn't, because I've been hearing about this a lot, especially in light of kind of the Black Lives Matter movement being a huge kind of second wave. A lot of people are kind of having what really is consultations on how to kind of make sure that their business, whether that's a theatre business, whether it's a television company, whether it's a drama school, an anti-racist establishment. And I'm sorry, but in any other arena, that would be a consultation that you would be paying for. So having a kind of off-the-cuff chat about it and saying, can I chew your ear about this, is fine. But if it isn't compensated in a monetary sense, then it's the same problem that we're perpetuating, and it's not helpful. And that is, I'm just seeing it going on a lot, and it breaks my heart, because all of those conversations that are being had, the nature, the content of the conversation is things that people would be discussing in therapy in any other time. There's an unfurling of pain that goes with those conversations. And it's great that people are listening, but it has to be kind of treated as it is. It's a consultation. So if you want to contribute to Black Lives Matter, then pay Black artists.
Yes. Well said, Allyson. Anything on that, Anne? Do you want to add anything to?
I'm so sorry. I'm actually sitting here thinking, sorry, I swore, everyone.
Oh.
I'm actually thinking about a swear word. I'm sorry about that. Then, you know, now I can hear my mother. I can hear my mother going, "You don't need to swear to get your point across, Anne. You don't need to do that." Anything to add? No, not really. Yeah, again, it comes back to this. Yeah. It comes back to this taking a chance. But again, it's like, it's the saying it and doing it are two different things. You know, we can talk about this till the cows come home, but unless we actually then do something, unless we do hire, and yes, of course, I'm not saying that we should hire people of colour simply because they're a person of colour. They've got to be good at the job, but guaranteed, if you look hard enough, of course they're there. Because if you don't look, then again, you're just being lazy. So you're just, you know, adding to the problems. So it's a case of, yeah, it's a bit more effort, but, you know, it's worth it. It's worth it, because in the end, you will bring in those audiences. You will create work that is more, again, diversified, a bit like Charleen. But if you're going to create work like that, you know, it will be there. But it takes a bit more effort and time. And I'm aware that time is money, but it is what it is, or else we just keep going round in circles.
Yeah.
Someone had a question.
They did, but Doug, did you want to jump in before? Because I'm aware of the time as well.
Yeah, I'm just aware of the time, and I think one of the important things is what's next. Because I think, you know, the really exciting thing, and that has been the really brilliant thing about these sessions, you know, it's been the great things about, I can't use that word great really, but the positive things that's come out of COVID is the connectivity that's happened across these sessions, and particularly in this session about being isolated and coming together. And Gularana picked up a point as well about intersectionality across the region. That seems to be the real, you know, there's so much joy here and people coming together and it being heard and speaking together. So it really does need to carry on. So I wonder what do we want to do? How do we want to move that forward? And I'm just thinking about Dilek, is there a way that we can work together across the region as kind of two organisations, and maybe other organisations, where we really reach across with our influence
Yeah, I definitely think there is room for that. I like the idea of you know, creatives of color or artists of color getting together, and also I really like, and I've been thinking about the idea of grassroots training. You know, not everyone will know about drama school, not everyone will know about theatre and stuff like that. And it's visibility, I think, from a artistic development and from a theatre point of view, is making your offer visible. And how do you get that visibility across? And it's I think it is a joining of theatres, going this look at this industry. But yeah, I think there's definitely something there.
Shall we have a chat?
Yeah.
Shall we set up a session and we have a chat, and then we probably call on, well, everybody, you know, to maybe lead on that session and connect. It'd be great if we could just connect up the whole of the region, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Because there is a shared experience that's being spoken about for the first time. So the power of bloody Zoom, who would have thought? It's amazing. Great, okay, well, we'll have that chat. And we'll think about who else we can bring into that conversation as well. Okay. Does that sound good? We've just made that decision without other going. Is that something that people want?
That sounds amazing.
All right,
yeah.
Great, okay.
Definitely.
And it's nice to see a lot of people kind of saying me too, or like chiming in things that resonated. It's nice to kind of, for us as well, it's nice to see that things that we've felt and experienced haven't been, that we're genuinely not alone in that. Like, it's nice to hear that other people have felt that and seen that and resonated.